Hello and welcome to the stream. Just give me a second. All this seems to be working. Excellent. Excellent. Just check out Twitch. Twitch is fine. YouTube is fine. Excellent. Very good. Hi and welcome. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the stream. I hope you all are doing good. And my name is Darko. And today we are going to be looking at how to get started with AWS CodeBuild. So that's kind of the plan for today. I'm going to be talking about what is CodeBuild, why is it important, and all that stuff. So I guess we're good to get started. Hello, good morning, Doug, or good afternoon. Well, at least for me, it's afternoon. It's an afternoon coffee as well. So today the plan is to kind of have a look at what is CodeBuild. Talk a bit about why is it important and how can you get started with CodeBuild. And I know I mentioned CodeBuild once before in one of my previous streams when I did the whole CI/CD spiel, so the entire DevOps CI/CD pipeline using CodeBuild and CodePipeline and CodeDeploy. But today we're going to just focus on CodeBuild because when you cover like 3 or 4 services, you may not show one service the best as you can. So today I'm going to try to kind of explain a bit more specifically on the CodeBuild side. So, but before I start, I just want to mention a few things. Why is CodeBuild important, or why is this tool needed for us, right? So, and usually CodeBuild or services such as CodeBuild are mentioned when we talk about software delivery, and this all goes down to DevOps, right? This mystical thing everybody likes to talk about, DevOps. And no, CI/CD pipeline is not DevOps, right? It's one of the tools you can have in your DevOps setup or in your DevOps enabled organization. It's very difficult to put DevOps as a single thing because it's so many things. So, but in essence, what is DevOps and why does it kind of connect to CodeBuild? So DevOps is a set of tools, practices, and cultural shifts that enable your organization, your company, your team to move in a faster pace. So there are a lot of different things when it comes to DevOps. It's not purely software delivery, right? So it's not just development. There's also operations. In essence, it's not a merger of developers and operations into a single person. So it doesn't mean that the operations folks need to code or they need to write the application, business application logic, nor is it expected from the developers to, like front-end developers to, patch servers. So with all the cultural practices and tooling and all of those things in place, that will enable you to actually automate a lot of those things or make it more accessible for people without specific knowledge, right? And why is CodeBuild part of that, or in general, why is code building a part of that? Well, way back when, you would have people specifically tasked for building code. So there would be a part of your organization that was just here to compile code, right? So your developer would be working on something, then you send it off to a compile farm or whatever you would like to call it, and the code is built there. Now, that was fine a long time ago when you would have a single release per a quarter, right? That was fine, but it changes a bit now when you want to make multiple changes throughout the day, even, right? Good morning, Graham. For example, Amazon.com, so the big old Amazon.com retail platform, back in, I believe, in 2001 or 2004. I think it's, I cannot say the year. So it's somewhere in the first half of the 2000s, in the first decade of the 2000s. So the entire application, the entire retail platform was a single application, so big old monolith. And one of the things which was interesting for me, the compile time took 24 hours. To compile the Amazon.com retail platform, which is ridiculous, right? So, and I bet there was a team for it. There was a build farm, and you have to maintain all of those things. Now, things don't work like that anymore. Well, I hope they don't work like that anymore. We try to move a bit faster, so we need a tool that will help us speed up builds a lot. And again, this is this is not necessarily talking about serverless, but there are some use cases for serverless when it comes to CodeBuild. You'll see CodeBuild is this very versatile tool that's kind of, it can do a lot of things, not just build code. So we need a tool such as CodeBuild. Now, there's a lot of third-party tooling out there as well that it can do the same thing, but I'm going to be talking about CodeBuild today. So we need a tool that will help us, well, give us an accessible way to build stuff, or a simple way to kind of implement this build procedure or build tool set into our pipeline. So you take your code from one side, right? So you ingest your code into one end of the pipeline, and then you output a build artifact or even deploy said code to production. So what is CodeBuild, right? So CodeBuild is this thing, like we like to call it, it's a fully managed integration service. So it's part of the CI, of the CI/CD pipeline. So CI/CD stands for continuous integration, continuous delivery, or continuous deployment, depending on how you look at it. And that initial CI part, or the integration part, is where you would, in essence, provide your source code to a pipeline, and then something in it would run unit tests on it, run some basic local static / non-static tests, and build the code and produce an artifact. Now, then what you do with the artifact, it's your thing. How are you going to deploy it? Are you going to store it somewhere? You know, it's really up to you. And CodeBuild is part of this integration part of this building / testing. So it's not just used for build, it's not just used for building, it's also used for testing. And you'll see a lot of examples when people use CodeBuild within AWS, they actually test the code, right? So it's, and this might be fair because a lot of the programming languages used today are not compiled, right? So of course, if we talk about Java or we talk about C++ or Golang or whatnot, yes, they're compiled, but a lot of people write in JavaScript, a lot of people write in Python, and those things are not compiled per se. But one of the things you can do with them is test them, right? Run unit tests against them in the integration phase. So CodeBuild is kind of for that, and it's a fully managed service. So that means you do not have to manage any EC2 instance, any virtual machine, any Docker image somewhere out there that will build your piece of code. And I know a lot of people use things such as Jenkins, right? Jenkins is a great little tool that does all of this, and but Jenkins runs on a dedicated host, a virtual machine, or something that you have to manage, which in essence we like to avoid to do. So CodeDeploy is this thing, you just give it an artifact or you just point it to somewhere. Hey, this is where your artifact is, build it. And then you define a whole bunch of ways how it should build. In essence, and you'll see an example of what I'll do later on, is it doesn't just build, it doesn't just test, it can also deploy to an extent, right? So yeah. Also, one of the things you can do with CodeBuild is you can actually you can use CodeBuild in conjunction with Jenkins. So Jenkins has a plugin for CodeBuild. So if you have never used Jenkins, Jenkins is basically this big old workload / CI tool, or it gives you the ability to build code on it, run arbitrary workloads, or not workloads, sorry, run arbitrary tasks against it. So such things as deployment and copying and a whole lot of different things. And if you want to scale out if you want to scale out Jenkins, what you usually do is you have this thing called build nodes. So you spin up an additional build node, which can do some specific build tasks. With the CodeBuild plugin for Jenkins, Jenkins can actually use CodeBuild as it's basically build node. So it uses it as its secondary build nodes. So instead of spinning up an EC2 instance, it will use CodeBuild. And from the technical perspective, looking at the back end of CodeBuild is just a container running somewhere in the blackness of the cloud, which executes arbitrary commands that you give it. So in that sense, it is fully managed, so you don't have to worry about it. It spins up. It takes some seconds to do it, and once it's completed its execution, it spins down, and that's it, right? So one of the things I would like to just do before we start is to have a look at the pricing, right? So CodeBuild. I don't know the pricing by heart, but it's basically, it's billed per minute, if I understand correctly. So there's also it's per minute. There is a build. There's a free tier included. If you have free tier or the new account or a new AWS account, you can get up to 1,000 minutes per month, right? No, yeah, per month, 100 build minutes per month for a free tier, and then the prices of building again are per minute, depending on what kind of a build instance you're using, because you can get these bigger build instances as well, which might build your code faster if you need something. You can get up to you can get a GPU one large build instance which has 244 gigabytes of RAM and 32 virtual CPUs. So if you have this massive build project or a massive test or something you need to do, this is a great way to do it, and it costs $0.50 a minute. $0.50 a minute. So in essence, it can also not be very expensive if you do it, well, not too much. So what this brings us to, the more improved you have your build procedure or your code builds faster, the cheaper it is. So that's pretty good, right? But yeah, let's actually get started. Let's create a little build project or a little build thingy, so we can show how it works, right? So let's get started. I'm actually going to use some sample code here. I'm going to use a small Java application, and I'm going to build a Java application. But instead of doing this through the entire pipeline, I mean, I can create all of this within 5 clicks through a service such as CodeStar, right? Or deploy it through CDK or whatnot. But I'm going to do this completely manually, and instead of using a full-on CI/CD pipeline, I'm just going to do this manually through S3 and then load the code to CodeBuild and output the code somewhere else. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to create an S3 bucket. So I have already an S3 bucket. So I'm going to create 2 buckets. One of the buckets is going to be for my inputs or my input code, the thing I'm going to provide CodeBuild to run. And the second bucket will be my output bucket. So let me just use the same naming scheme, output. Now you can use the same buckets as well, that's no problem, but I just want to make sure I use 2 so it's a bit more visible. So if I do this and delete it, I can see that I have 2 buckets right now. Excellent. So I think this first one should be empty. I did some testing earlier on today, so I think I cleaned it all up. Excellent. Cool. So what is the first thing we need to do? First thing, we need to get some source code. So I have some source code here. So let me actually create a directory here called Java. Let me zoom in. Now the application code in itself is not very important. Let me just do some copying. How can I do this? What would be the best way? Let me do this like that and that. Okay, paste. Excellent. So if you see here, I have the Java application. Excellent. So it's a small Java application, nothing special. It's a hello world application. So if I would vim main, C main Java, this one, it's just a small hi hello thing application, nothing special. But I want to use Java in this case because I want to actually show you how you can compile or how can you build code. So that's the whole goal here. So the Java application itself is not very important. But what is important is, once I get this code to CodeBuild, how does CodeBuild know what to do? How does CodeBuild know that this is Java and that it should run Maven and that it should something, right? So for that, we use a thing called build spec. So build spec is a YAML formatted file that sits in the same directory as your application code. It doesn't have to, it can be somewhere else. By default, it's a file called buildspec.yml sitting in the root of your application directory. And it has a specific format to it, right? So let's go create it. So when buildspec.yml, there you go. So we need to define version 0.2. I think this is just for compatibility reasoning. We need to have it here. And then we define phases. So CodeBuild goes through phases or lifecycle events and does specific things. So those lifecycle events can be install, pre-build, build, post-build, right? So on those events, you can tell it to execute certain commands. Now, what are you going to put in those events or in those lifecycle at those lifecycle points? It really depends on what you're doing, how you're building it. So this could be a potential good way to optimize some things. So I have a couple of things. Install. So during the install phase, this is where you actually set up your build container. Now, because this is an Amazon managed build container, I'm actually going to use just a kind of a meta command here called runtime version, which is going to install the specific packages for a specific runtime version. So if I just do this, call it runtime version, so like that, yeah, and call it Java and Corretto 11. Did I write it correctly? Corretto. I'm missing an R. Corretto 11. Okay, excellent. So I am going to be using Corretto 11 here as the runtime environment for Java. Cool. Now, one of the things I need to I'm going to go to build. So I have this set up. Let's time to do some building. Now, commands, this is where you define which commands are going to be executed by CodeBuild. So let's do some logging first. Echo build started with Maven at date. No, not that. I want a backtick. Date. So what this will do, it will just basically make a little log line in our log, so we can see what it does. And it's great to increase the verbosity of your build, so you understand what happened and when it happened. Then mvn install, and that's it, right? So this will basically build your Java application. That's all I have to do. I just want to also define one more thing. Post build, and I mentioned that we need to commands. Did I get commands? Yes, that's fine. And I want to just do echo build complete and then date. So the post build command here is just a logging feature, just gonna spit out in the log, hey, the build has been completed on this exact date and time. So pretty cool. And finally, I'm done with the phases. So I've set up my well, actually I haven't. I have made a mistake here. Let me do. I need to do this, that. That looks good. It's YAML. Make sure you have the proper tab spacing in place, otherwise it's gonna complain. Okay, so now after the phases, I need to set up the artifacts. So once all of this is done, I need to tell CodeBuild, hey, this is gonna be my artifact. Make sure that these files are included in my artifact and do something with it, right? So in my use case, it's just artifacts, like that, and then define. No, please go here like that. That should be the right way, yeah. Artifacts, files, and then I'm just going to define target message util, and then something like this, right? Jar. So it's going to output this file. So I'm going to say, because once it completes, once Maven install runs, it's going to generate a file called messageutil-1.0.jar within the target directory. So I'm telling CodeBuild that that file, the compiled file, is my artifact. Ignore everything else. So all the build files, all the source code will be ignored in the artifact. So just let me have a look. Does this look good? Artifact, files, target, commands. I just want to mvn install, build completed. It looks fine. I think all the tab spacing is in order. There was one more shift. Let me just count the dots. Yeah, seems fine. Famous last words. Okay, cool. So this is all I need, right? So this is all I need to have my application here, right? So my my Java application ready to be processed by CodeBuild. And what I like about the build spec file is that you take changes to your application or the way you build it with you along. If you commit this to a Git repo, it goes along with you. So no matter whatever new build project you use, it also knows constantly how to compile your files. So once this is done, I am gonna just zip this. So if I zip, I will just do -r and call it java.zip and just this, right? So I have created a zip file, java.zip, and I'm going to be using that file as my source from this S3 bucket. So within the input bucket, I'm going to just add that. Let me add this file. CodeBuild stream java.zip. Excellent. And upload, please. Cool. Now it's time for the fun stuff, time for CodeBuild. So let me zoom in here a bit. If you go to CodeBuild, so again, services and search for CodeBuild, it should take you here to, and it should show you all of your CodeBuild projects if you have some. If you don't, you might as well get the getting started page like this. But actually, let's get started. Let's create the build project here. So create project, give it a name. So let's call it stream Java build. You can, hey, this is build. Excellent. Now we have to define the source. And I've mentioned that there's a bunch of ways you can do source. One of the defaults is, of course, code commit, which is our Git repository solution. Another one is S3, which I'm going to be using here, but you can also use GitHub, Bitbucket, and GitHub Enterprise. These are the currently supported sources for code commit. So for code build. So I'm going to use S3, and I'm going to say code build. I'm going to pick my bucket here and define java.zip. So it's going to look for a java.zip within this bucket. I don't need to define any source version. Now, for the environment, this is the important part. This is where you define how is your build image going to look like. So I am going to use a managed image because I told you this uses Docker in the backend. So I'm going to use a managed image. In this case, you can use also your own. You can define your own Docker images if you want something very specific. Now, when you use your own images, sometimes the launch or the provisioning time of your code build project or job could take a bit longer. So just take note of that. I would advise that you maybe calculate how much custom things you're burning into your own image compared to how long does it take to spin up, and how long does it take for the Amazon managed image to spin up plus install your packages. So this might be a trade-off. So I'm going to choose Amazon Linux in this case. I'm just going to use the standard runtime. Just going to use the image 2.0. Now I know that 2.0 works. I have not tried the 3.0, so I'm just going to leave it as such. Environment is Linux, and it's going to create a new service role for this build job. So it needs some specific configuration, specific permissions to do this. I'm just going to let it do it all on its own, so I don't have to care. Now, the build spec file, this is where it says, hey, you can use a build spec file, or you can also enter commands manually within this in a really nice editor. But I'm going to use a build spec file because I prefer it that way. Now, the artifacts, I'm going to tell it, hey, output the artifact to S3. So code deploy, there is this code deploy output bucket, and I'm going to call it, what am I going to call it? I'm just leave it blank. So it's going to output actually the jar file. So I'm going to leave everything here. I'm not going to package it because CodeBuild is actually packaging it for me, or it's not packaging, it's just sending out the jar file. That's it. So create build project. Excellent. So now my build project is ready. It has not run yet. So one of the things I have to do right now is run this build project. And let's see if this would work. So I will just leave everything as is. You can also define a timeout as well. The default is 1 hour, but you can also change it between 5 minutes and 8 hours. So yeah. And if I click start build, hopefully it should build. So now what we're going to see in a few minutes is going to see the logs here. So if you go to phases, we can see that it's submitted, it's been put into the queue, and it's provisioning the resources. So it's basically provisioning a container, a thing where you're going to have your build running. So it is provisioned, it's downloading the source, it's running the install phase, the pre-build phase. Now, it's running the build phase right now. So this will take the longest, apparently. So the provisioning and the build phase takes the longest. See, it's 17 seconds in this case, because it's a managed image, so it should be fine. Build took 30 seconds. Again, it's a very simple Hello World application, so that's why it doesn't take long. And post-build, there's nothing, or there is post-build that just echoes something, right? And it uploads the artifacts and finalizes, that's it. So if we want to look at the details, in the big build logs, what we can see here is, can we see it all? Yeah, so we can see that it's starting and it's going to be running, running mvn install, and we can see running command echo build started on date. So you will see the output of this command, and then it's running mvn install. Then we see the whole mvn or maven build process here. That's all fine. Oh, Java. Scroll all the way down. I'm not a Java person, so yeah. Wow. That's a lot of logs. That's more log files than I have in my code. Okay, excellent. So now build is successful. And entering post build, and basically, hey, build completed on blah, blah, blah. That's it. So now this has actually uploaded this jar file to S3. So if I go to S3 and go to my buckets and search for, again, code deploy, oops, code build, right? Output, hopefully, there we go. This is my project, this is the target, and this is my jar file. So I have a built jar file. I can do with it whatever I want. I can deploy it manually. I can give it to some other person to deploy it as well. So this would be your run-of-the-mill, hey, use CodeBuild to build. Again, one of the other things I could have done here, for example, during the build phase, I could have went to my build spec file here and maybe run some testing utilities for Java. I don't know which they are. There are some. Hello, hi. Thank you very much. Hope you're enjoying it. So one of the things you can do here, instead of just running mvn install, you can potentially run some testing frameworks for Java. And if those things fail, the build will fail. So before running your build, you can do like a pre-build semantic test of your code as well, besides just running the build. So that's pretty cool as well. So and a lot of people use CodeBuild just for testing instead of compiling. So that's about when it comes to Java. Let's do something else right now. So one of the other things I want to do is I want to show you another great use, and this is a very common use case when it comes to CodeBuild, is people use CodeBuild to build Docker images, right? Or yeah, Docker images. So they basically use CodeBuild to create Docker images and then upload them to ECS CloudFormation registry, right? So not CloudFormation, sorry. ECS registry, or is it registry? Repository, ECS repository, yes. So they use this for that. So let's do that here. mkdir Java, no, let's do Docker. cd Docker, and let's create a Docker application. You remember last week, I did some ECS stuff, so I created a simple Docker application, so I'm just going to replicate that. So Vim, it's a super simple Docker application, Docker file, and then let me just paste this in. Where are you? Excellent. So what this does, it just creates a small Docker image with my website and nothing special, right? But I need to create here a directory called website, and I can do that in what way? CodeBuild, Docker, this. Excellent. So now I have my website, and it's my just index.html, nothing special. So in order for us to build this, I could absolutely do everything locally. I can just run, Docker build and then locally upload it to repository. But that's not how we do things. We need a proper tool, right? So we want a way for me to basically commit this piece of code, this raw code somewhere, and I want to allow CodeBuild to do everything else for me, right? So we're just gonna do that. There's a bunch of other things we need to do here. It's not as simple as doing the Java build because we need to do a bit more additional permissions, etc. So, but we're gonna do the same thing. So first of all, because we're not using a proper code repository, we're gonna be using S3 again. Let's zip all of these things. So zip r docker zip, and that's it. So it's gonna add all the things. Shoot, we forgot something. rm zip. Let's add a build spec file, right? So we're gonna define a build spec file here, and it's gonna be a bit more complex. But I'm gonna actually explain line through line what it does. So let me actually do this. Let me do a bit of this scaffolding before. I don't want you to look at me type all day. So let's talk about the pre-built ones. So how is this gonna look when we do containers with CodeBuild? So we're gonna log in to ECS or the ECS repository. We're gonna build Docker the image. We're gonna tag the image, and then we're gonna push the image to ECR, and that's it, right? That's gonna be our build process with containers. So the first thing we need to do is log in to ECS. Now I've done this all on my laptop on my last week's stream, but basically this is the same thing in a more automated form. So if I paste this in, so you will see that it's running AWS ECR get login and then region. And there's a variable here, which I'm going to define later on. So we're going to be talking about environment variables as well, because they're very important when it comes to code build as well. Okay, so that's my pre-build. So it runs the AWS CLI local command, logging in to the ECR repository. That's just a typical Docker login approach. Cool. Now let's do the build part. So let me copy build, and I'm going to explain what all of it does. Like that. Ooh, that's a horrible thing. Let me move. Yeah, that's bad. Just have a look. Does this look fun? All good. Excellent. So again, an two echo statements just so for easier logging. And then we have a Docker build. So what we're doing here is building the current Docker file with whatever the Docker file is, right? And we're also giving it a tag called image repo name :image tag. And again, these are environment variables, which we're going to define in our code build project. And finally, the big old tag is where we actually tag the image with the repository full-on name. This is what we're going to be using on to push the code later on to ECR. So this is the build phase, and then the post-build phase. Unlike before, we're going to actually do some deployments here as well. And as there are not, in essence, deployments, they are like that. So again, two echoes just for the sake of logging. And then we're running Docker push, which is pushing an image that we have created locally into our repository. So, and that should be it, right? We have no artifacts here per se, because CodeBuild in this case is not outputting a standard artifact. So it's not going to be hosting an artifact in S3, or it's not going to be pushing it like that. It's actually pushing an artifact through Docker push to a repository. Excellent. So let me, oh wait, I just want to make sure that something looks not so good. All the tab spacing. I like YAML more than JSON, but I sometimes struggle with with this thing. So you want to make sure that this all looks pretty good. Excellent. Cool. Now we run the zip file, zip command. Again, there we go. We have all the things here, and let's upload this thing again to our input bucket. So if I go to S3, CodeBuild, input, upload, add files, Yeah, I agree. YAML is, I mean, just because of the tab formatting, it's such a pain. Why couldn't they just combine, brackets and nice formatting like YAML has? But hey, sometimes you just have to follow it. So you want to make sure that your build spec is YAML verified. So there you go. You sometimes make JSON arrays instead of YAML CloudFormation templates. Wow. You like to live dangerously, indeed. All right. I remember back to times where we had no YAML, and then you have to do CloudFormation, and you want to define a script within CloudFormation. For example, you want to define user data script for EC2, and then you have to escape every line. My God, that was a pain. Yeah, that was not the funnest of things. All right, we have added our artifact, or we have added our code to the S3 bucket. Let's create a new project. Let's call it stream Docker build. Well, yes, so that's a great point, Rocky. Writing your code in YAML, but using it as JSON can be easier because, again, you can use JSON in a single line, right? So that's the great benefit of JSON. You can just all string it in a single line, in a command line if you want. But it's horrible to read, right? No comments and all those things. What's great about it, CloudFormation, there's a tool called CFN Flip that basically allows you to flip between the two versions of templates. So amazing. All right, so again, S3. I'm gonna do the code build input bucket, and we called it docker.zip, right? Yeah, CDK and Pulumi are very nice, I would agree. So makes it easier, you completely avoid a templating language. You can use something more generic. Docker.zip. So in this case, I'm gonna use Ubuntu because it works with Ubuntu. I have not tried to use Amazon Linux in this case, so I'm gonna risk it because I want to make sure the stream is fun for you, not for me just trying to scratch my head why it didn't work. So runtime standard, yeah, you can use CloudFormation Designer to flip JSON and YAML. Absolutely, yeah, that's very good as well. Runtime standard. I'm gonna use the latest CodeBuild image that works. That's fine. I'm gonna enable privilege flags here because for Docker, if you want to build Docker images, you need to enable this because in essence, you're building Docker images within Docker containers. You need this. So I'm gonna create a new service role, but I'm gonna have to do some changes to the service role as we go along. Now, the important thing, environment variables. We haven't looked at this. We haven't looked at this last time, but this is where you also define your timeouts. If you want to install specific certificates for this, and also a VPC you want to define. By default, CodeBuild does not run in a VPC, so it runs in this black box or the mystical cloud of AWS. So it doesn't run directly within your account. But if you define a VPC, make sure that you have access to the internet, right? So make sure that you define a VPC that has a subnet which has internet access. If you do that, yeah. So this is also where you choose your compute platform. The default one is the smallest one, but you can go to the crazy 145 gigs. Yeah. Environment variables. So I have a few environment variables I want to set here. And I've actually, let me have a look at my build spec file. So I want to do those things because I want to reference them through here, right? So AWS default region, I'm going to say AEU West 1. Excellent. What's my next one? It's AWS account ID, and I need to give it my account ID. Do I have my account ID somewhere? Somewhere I can use it easily. Oh, I need to go here. Question, would you implement a container service if your work doesn't really use containers? Is that a question? Would you use containers just for the sake of using containers? No. I used to work in premium support, and like 2 years ago, a bit more, people would write me, "Hey, my boss told me we need to use containers. How?" So don't use containers just because you should use containers. Use containers if they make sense to your workload. Right? If you want to do microservices, they make a lot more sense if you want to containerize your application like that. But don't just use them because you should, right? First of all, see if you should. And there's a good chance that you should. Okay, image repo name. Aha! We need to go to the repository. We need a repository. Where are we going to store our Docker image? So ECS, actually, no, it's container registry. Yeah. Let's create a repository. We're going to call it stream Docker build. Excellent, create repo. Perfect. I'm going to call it stream Docker build. And then the final one is image tag. Let's do it like this. Now, here's what these things are. So these are environment variables. These variables get passed down to your build job, which in essence means that you can change these variables on the fly and you can update values within your build spec file. So your build spec file has, you know, these variables here, right? So the for example, where is this? Well, this. No, that's not my mouse. This one. So this is a variable. This is a variable, and all of these things will get translated or will get computed from my environment variables set here, right? So I'm basically setting the name of the variable and the value. That should be fine. I'll use the default build spec file, so I don't have to do that. There are no artifacts in this case. Yeah, that should be fine. Create build project. Now, one more thing I need to do here is I want to go to my, oh, thank you for the subscription, Doraki, thank you. I want to go here to the stream thing, click on it, and go to permissions. I want to add some permissions for it. I want to enable CodeBuild to write to this thing. So if I go to add statement, I'm going to call it CodeBuild. CodeBuild. I'm going to do allow, and I'm going to do service code build. What is the code build service name? I think it's codebuild.amazon.com. I think so. I need to check that. Give me a second. Yes, that's a very great point, post to. Do not set the path variable like this because you may break things. If you set the path variable, a lot of things may not work. So if you set variables, make sure to set your own ones, not the built-in ones such as path. Codebuild.amazon AWS.com. So AWS.com. So I'm just saying that this principle, anything coming from this, can do something. Can do, what do I need? I need to set up a few things. So it needs these permissions. It needs the following permissions. It needs to batch check layer availability. It needs to complete layer upload. It needs to, where is it? Initialize layer upload. It needs put image like that and upload layer part. Where is it? Upload layer part, like so. So those are the permissions it needs. It needs one more permission, but that permission we cannot define like this. This permission we need to define on the role itself. So if I do this, let me just have a review. Does this look good? That's fine. Click save. Perfect. So now I have basically enabled CodeBuild to do all of these things, which is not the securest way of doing it, but still. You may wanna change these things as well. But this is a great way to show it up pretty fast. So once I've done this, I've created my project. One of the things I need to do is I need to go to IAM. Like in every stream, we have to have a look at IAM, or Identity and Access Management. Let's have a look at our roles. So we created a role called CodeBuild something. Is it CodeBuild something? It's this one, I think. Yeah, this one. This is the one. So one of the things I'm going to attach a policy here is I'm going to just attach policy for ECS, or actually repository registry, right? Registry. Yeah, I'm going to give it the power user access because this role in itself has this one, get authorization token. I could have done this separately, but I'm just going to attach this one. It needs the get auth token permission for it to log in to ECR. So attach, and we should be good to go. Now, let's give it a try. So if I hit off start build, one of the things you can see here, additionally, we can actually see the variables defined here. I can change them before I run the build, but I'm not. I'm just going to leave it as so. I think that looks fine. And start build. Now, let's cross our fingers and hope this works. So going to phases again, let's see what happens. This is submitted, queued, it's provisioning now. By the way, if you're using a managed image and you pick the latest image or an old image and it takes a long time to provision, when I say a long time, I mean a couple of minutes. Try choosing a different image because you may are using an old image or an image that's not yet fully cached. So times like 15 to 25 seconds should be some things you're looking at. All right, so that's fine. Pre-build is working. Let's see build. Okay, build was successful. Let's see post-build. Let's actually have a look at the logs. Oh, it has finished. So install phase, it has logging into ECR. It has been successfully logged in. That's all fine. So we can see here. Now it's building the Docker image. It's pulling the Nginx layer from the internet, right? So it's copying the website. It's building. Where is it? It's running Docker tag. It has succeeded, and it's pushing. It has pushed the image onto ECR. So our code build has actually completed. So if we go to here, we will see that we have a successful job status. And if we go to ECR, to repositories, if we go here, we will see that we have an image uploaded, well, a minute ago. So in essence, this is what a lot of people do. They use CodeBuild to build Docker images or Docker containers and push them onto ECR, or you can push them anywhere. Because of the versatility of the build spec file, I could have run any arbitrary set of commands here and deployed my artifact or whatnot to whatever, right? So one of the examples I've done in the past is I've done a lot of things with Chef and Puppet. So I've used the code build element of a pipeline to actually test my Chef code. So I would run like test kitchen or I would run Chef Spec or some of the things against my Chef code to see if it works. And if it works, I would use CodeBuild actually to submit my CodeBuild, or submit my Chef cookbooks to Chef, right? So it's very versatile. When people tell me, hey, what can CodeBuild do? A lot, right? Again, just be careful how long you run it, and be careful how much, so you don't get overcharged. But one of the things I need to stress here, most of the time, you would not do it the way I did it, through an S3 bucket and then, creating a zip file here and then going to CodeBuild and running a build manually. It's not 2001. You would do this automatically, right? So you would do this through a pipeline. So services such as Code Pipeline can actually help you do this by automatically ingesting code or the artifacts from a specific location. That can be an S3 bucket as well. But in most use cases, it's going to be a code commit repository or a GitHub repository. It's a code repository, right? And then it will automatically kick off a build project and do all of these things. So instead of doing this manually like I did, you would probably use a pipeline in this case. So that has been very, I would say, a lighthearted or a very high-level look at CodeBuild. Again, there are a lot of nitty-gritty things how you can use CodeBuild with custom images. You can do a lot more with putting a CodeBuild container within the VPC. You can do things such as running your own images in this case. So there's a lot of different things you can kind of tweak it. It's a very simple service from the onset, but the more you get into it, the more features it has. So I think it's a necessary service for any CI/CD pipeline. Again, even if you're using something like Jenkins, you can use CodeBuild for your build jobs as well. So, and there's a lot of examples in the documentation on use cases, such as like using it with ECR or using it with GitHub. How can you use it, for example, with Secrets Manager and all of those things, right? For example, instead of hard coding some information within your application code, you can use CodeBuild to actually change those entries within your code through Systems Manager, Secret Manager, or Parameter Store. So pretty cool. Yeah, well, that's been that. I really hope you enjoyed this stream. It was really fun for me to do. I like CodeBuild. I've been supporting it for the past 4 years, I guess. Join me on this Thursday stream. This Thursday, we're going to look at another interesting tool which does not receive enough talk, and that's CloudTrail. So it's a tool that tracks all API calls made to your AWS account. So it's a great auditing and monitoring tool, or not monitoring, it's an auditing and governance tool inside of your AWS account. So join me this Thursday at the same time for this. This video will come out, I think not tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow or Friday on YouTube as well, because I'm also streaming on YouTube, and I will put all of those videos there as well. So if you missed a certain part of it, it's going to be available as well. See you Thursday, and yeah, I hope you enjoy the stream. Have a nice day. Bye bye.